From the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., Cole on Congress. The program discussing national issues that affect Oklahoma. Your host, U.S. Representative Tom Cole.
Thank you for joining me today for another episode of Cole on Congress. Today we're pleased to have a new member of our Oklahoma delegation, a special guest, Congressman Markwayne Mullin. Markwayne was elected to represent the 2nd District of Oklahoma and currently serves on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and the National Resources Committee. Markwayne, good to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting.
I always try to start out with something personal, and
there's a lot of personal stuff that
well, there's a lot of personal stuff, but actually in your case it's all good, which is pretty unusual. But you know, as I got to know you as you were campaigning, one of the things that I really appreciated about you, first of all, I had the opportunity to meet your wife, so I knew you were pretty.
I married up.
You married way up, partner.
I know.
Way
I don't
up.
tell her that too often.
But I think she probably knows. But you know, it was a real indication how important your family is to you,
right.
And what a tremendous sacrifice it is for you to be away from them because you have little children as well. Very successful business person, and anybody that's been in business knows that takes time, attention, effort, and hours. So that's another sacrifice from you, for you. You didn't spend your life wanting to come here. You know, you're Oklahoman to the core. So being away from our state and not just your immediate family, but your extended family, because I've heard about how you talk about your dad and your grandfather and what your Native American heritage means to you. I mean, those are exceptional sacrifices to have made to have come. So first question to you is, why in the world did you leave that beautiful family, that terrific business, and that community that you love and revere and come to Washington, D.C.?
I leave God's country is what I call it. You know, I have been very blessed in my life. I tell everybody, if you want to see someone that has the potential to be great at whatever their greatness is, look at their home life, because someone with a happy home life can reach that potential. And so my wife's played a very strong bond between her and I. I mean, we got married when I was 19. She was 18 years old, so it's been quite a while. But throughout the years, we've been able to grow a business and be able to take it from literally on the verge of failure to a very successful plumbing company, and then it's multiplied into 7 other companies. And I looked around March of 2011, and I realized that my biggest competition was no longer down the street. It was the federal government. The amount of money we were spending to comply was 40 cents on every dollar to meet a mandate or a regulation. It became my biggest threat and my biggest headache. And I thought, this is absurd. I mean, how in the world can someone actually think that the backbone of our economy, which is small businesses, can thrive underneath these conditions? And I'm not a good money morning quarterback. I tell everybody I got fed up. And when I start griping about something, I'm typically going to get involved in it. It's kind of like my managers and my leadership team that works for me. I never second guess their decision because they were in the thick of it when they had to make the decision. There's always a way to do things better, but who's to say I wouldn't have made a worse decision at the time? And so I never really griped too much about politics because I never knew what the vote was totally about. You know, we see the cover, but you never see the insides of a lot of our votes because most media, they don't throw it out there. So I didn't gripe a whole lot about it until the regulations got out of hand. And when they got out of hand, I said, okay, here we are. And we went all in, and we're here. And sometimes I scratch my head and think, wow.
You beat a very impressive and diverse primary field to get the nomination. Then you won a seat as a Republican, and a conservative Republican, where 70+% of the voters in that district are registered Democrats, strongest Democrat, and you didn't just slip in. I mean, you won by 20 points and carried every county in your district. So, you know, what did you learn on the campaign trail that the rest of us need to know?
Everybody's just like, okay, I never went out there and tried to relate with anybody. It's who I am. Wearing this suit isn't who I am. In fact, I'm about as uncomfortable as I can be, but I still keep the boots on, right? But I never went out there and tried to play politics because that's not who I am. I just went out there and told people my story, what I was upset about. And then it's really not about Republican or Democrats. I tell everybody, if you got America's best interest in mind, that's great. Let's do it. If you got a flag behind us, you can look at it and you can see that this is the most beautiful flag ever. I mean, with the red stripes and the white stripes and the blue, it's beautiful. And we get a pledge allegiance to it. And I can't imagine doing that to any other country. And so the politics should stay out of that. We should have everything should be in the best interest of the country first before we put Democrat or Republican on the label. And that doesn't always happen. And so when we approached it just the same way that I feel. Who cares if you're Republican? Who cares if you're Democrat? The Constitution wasn't wrote by one person. It was wrote by a whole bunch of individuals with different ideas, but they had one common theme. They wanted to make this the best country ever and give a footprint, give a guideline of how to get there. And they've done it. And that's what our focus should be right now. And so when we went out on the campaign trail, I expressed that over and over and over again. I didn't run as a Republican. I ran as a person fed up.
Well, it clearly worked. It was clearly you reflected the views and the values of what the people in eastern Oklahoma think. And that's a big, diverse district. I mean, from the Kansas border down to the Texas border, from very rural areas to areas that are immediately around some of our largest metropolitan areas, small medium towns. You represent a big slice of our state.
Big chunk of it's my family too. Well, I mean, my dad's side of the family came over because the outlaw. I mean, before statehood. My mom's side of the family, we came over here with the volunteer march with the Trail of Tears. And so we've been here forever. When you've been in the same area, and I'm talking about in Adair County, in Westville forever, you start thinking about the generations. I mean, we're talking about 5 generations. I'm the youngest of 7 in my family. My dad's the youngest of I don't know how many. So it gets big. I told everybody, I said, if I just win my family vote, I'll win this election because most of them are registered Democrats too. So, and we did that. We won the family vote, so that was important.
Well, that was good. I want to ask you how close it was, but as long as you got the majority.
Yeah, we got the majority of them.
Okay, good enough. Well, let me ask you this. You got here, obviously you're on 2 incredibly important committees.
Right.
From an Oklahoma standpoint, natural resources, everything from energy to Indians, is dealt with there. Obviously, transportation and infrastructure. You don't have to tell people how important roads and highways and bridges and ports and you name it, air traffic control centers and all this sort of stuff are. So tell me, what on those committees have you gotten yourself focused on and where are you digging in and think you're starting to make a difference?
Well, WRDA, obviously, our transfer.
You're going to have to explain to people what WRDA is. You're already becoming a politician, man. You use words like that.
Yeah, man, I did step into that one. We have a need to have mobile inland water ports, and the Corps has management over this. And the states really doesn't have any input, but the infrastructure of our ports are deteriorating, just like our highways and our roads.
Real quickly, the Corps, meaning the Corps of Engineers of the United States Army.
Yeah, most people in Oklahoma know the Corps because they gripe about it all the time. But the Corps has control over our ports. Well, our ports in, let's say, Port of Catoosa. This is an amazing fact, but it is the largest inland water port in the country. We brought Chairman Schuster, who is over the T&I, to the port, and his first words were, "This is in Oklahoma?"
Yeah.
But the importance that has to our economy, if the port is shut down because of a lock failure somewhere between here and the Gulf, which it only takes one lock to shut us down, it's an impact of $2 million a day in Oklahoma. $2 million a day because of lock failure. And so we have really been interested in trying to make sure the language is put in there that allows the states, when we're reauthorizing the water bill, which hasn't been done since the ban on earmarks, which was in 2007, and if what we're proposing is to say, if the lock fails, why do we have to wait on the federal government to react? We're the ones that's going to pay for it. everybody that lives and supports themselves off that channel, and everybody that was waiting for goods in Oklahoma is going to be affected. Our farmers are going to be affected because we can't get products down. Our oil fields are going to be affected because they can't get products down, and we can't bring products up. Why can't we have the businesses and the states have an emergency reaction plan to be able to run in there and fix it real quick? The argument we get on that is, well, one state might be able to do it and the other one can't, so it basically creates competition between the states.
Well, I thought in America competition, number one, is a pretty good thing.
That's right.
And so they each would actually work hard at getting better.
Yes.
Boy, what a novel concept.
Yeah, well, as you have pointed out to me, common sense doesn't exist in D.C., and I've used that over and over and over
What's
again.
the old line? Washington, D.C. is 10 square miles surrounded by reality. There's a lot of truth in that.
Yes.
So you're working on, obviously, the inland waterway. Other things on transportation that you're focused on?
Well, we're part of a 21st century transportation panel, which I'm by far the youngest member on it. There's only 11 of us. There's 6 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and we're charged with basically traveling all over the country over the next, well, now 3 more months, and to come up with what our most important needs are. And this is looking at rail, water, and roads, and also trying to find a way to have a suggestion for income. Our transportation is one role that the federal government does have. I mean, that is one role that no one can complain about, gripe about. We use it every day. And we have the best infrastructure in the world, I believe, but we're abusing it. And so, right now we're just maintaining, and we're not even doing a good job maintaining what we have. Well, in the business world, if you maintain, you're dying. You have to constantly be reinvesting in your company. We got to constantly be reinvesting in the right places in this country. But the money that's coming in, if we would utilize it the way we should, would be great. But it goes to so many places that transportation gets the back seat. So they're wanting us to find out a new way to create more revenue, which isn't a very popular topic when you're talking to people right now that's already spending way too much and sending way too much money up here to begin with. But we have to find a way that we reinvest into it. You know, the greatest generation is my granddad. World War II, he's still with us. Kenneth Morris, most people call him Cowboy though. And his generation is the ones that built this infrastructure. And that was 2 generations ago, and we're still using it. The interstate highways that we have right now, the traffic count on them is about twice what they were intended. Some people say as high as 3 times. And you don't have to do anything but travel I-40 or I-44 and figure that out real quick, how crowded and congested it is all the time. And so we really better start looking how to expand that system. And so that's another area that we're looking at with T&I. Now, natural resources is a whole other can of worms.
Well, let's go to natural resources. Again, that's an area of extraordinarily broad jurisdiction, all federal lands, which is about 20% of the country is owned by the federal government.
Which is
ridiculous.
Yes.
I'd love if you can figure out how to sell this stuff and get it in a private marketplace, it'd be great. Obviously, you have enormous impact on energy policy, both on federal land and offshore jurisdiction there. And then, of course, there's a range of things, national parks, whatever. But from an Oklahoma standpoint, Native American issues, because tribes are such a huge part of our economy. So what are you working on there?
Well, our biggest threat to energy, our biggest threat to our lands, and our biggest threat to even our tribal land as far as being able to use the resources we have beneath our feet is truly the EPA. And we have jurisdiction over them. And so we're looking at ways to get them out of our lives. I'm not saying all regulation is bad, but you're going to tell me that a federal agent that has never probably even been in the country in his life, never been on a well site in his life, as I say, he's never had poop on his boots before, is going to come out there and tell me how to take care of my land. I mean, where my kids are raised right now is the 4th generation on this land. I'm proud of it. Anybody comes over, I'm going to show you it, and I'm going to show it off, and it's a pleasure to do so. But yet we've got them coming on our farms every single day telling us what we got to do here and what we got to do here. They're doing the same thing now to our reservations and our tribal lands. We have energy resources beneath our feet. And the amount of permits that are being issued on tribal land when we're begging and asking to do so is like 60% less than on private land. Why? It's our land. There's a reason why it's our land. We want to take care of it, and if you have land, you want to try to living off of it, but we're having to ask permission every time we turn around. Our federal land that is owned literally 20% of this country is owned by the federal government. 20%. The production coming off of that land is a fraction of the production coming off of private land. Yet you had this president that stands up and says, underneath my administration, we have actually increased production. We've increased production because the technology that our private sector has developed and has been able to get to, not because he's issued any more permits. In fact, the land's locked up tighter than it ever has. And so through natural resources, we get the opportunity to go after that and ask the questions. The problem is we're having a hard time making the regulatory agencies accountable. Instead, they always hide behind this administration and they have full support of it.
Well, and obviously, as you point out, the president recently announced the, quote, new policies on global warming that it will never pass the Congress, would never pass the Congress. But he's going to use the regulatory authority that's invested in him, and they will push it right to the limit. And the EPA will be the tip of the spear and all that.
Here's a prime example. 2 years ago, there was roughly 160 plus laws passed through Congress. This is 2 years ago. There was nearly 3,000 regulations that was passed. The 3,000 regulations went into effect immediately. The 160 laws, some of them are still trying to be vetted. Regulatory agencies have no oversight, and this president abuses that power. What he did this week is he cost every single American, he cost every one of us money. Because everybody that pays a utility bill, their price just went up. So it doesn't make any, and yet he always says that he's watching out for the middle class or the poor, but they're the ones that's going to take it the hardest. I mean, if you're making minimum wage, your utility bills just increased. Your gas just increased. Everything that you do requires energy, and it increased across the board. So he cost the person on the lowest scale to the top 1%. He just cost you a tremendous amount of money.
Well, tick off 3 or 4 energy policies, or whatever number you like, that if you had the ability, you could be the king of energy for today. What would you like to see us doing as a country?
How about I do this? Get rid of the Department of Energy. I mean, there's a whole host of stuff, and you could hit the top 3, but in the business world, we look at, unfortunately, you have to, or fortunately, winners and losers. If my company is starting to struggle, I'm going to look at areas in the business that are being productive and areas that aren't. And the areas that aren't, either one, A, I'm going to fix it, or 2, I'm going to find out, are they doing what their intended purpose was? And if they're not, then I'm going to close that department down and reinvest into something that's working. The Department of Energy was created in 1978, which I know you'd been around for a while, but it was only a year after I was born.
Yeah, just keep rubbing it in.
Yeah, I had to throw that
we'll
out
edit
there.
that right out of this show.
So anyways, it was created in 1978. And its purpose was to limit our dependency on foreign oil. That's exactly the opposite direction we have went since that day. Exactly the opposite. And this week, when the president gave out his executive orders, he actually increased our dependency on foreign oil because he just made it tougher for us to get it at home. And at some point, when it's cheaper to ship it in than it is to make it here, we're going to start shipping it in. That's why we have so many imports and not as many exports, because it's cheaper to make it other places right now. And it's our threat. It's the threat of our economy is our oversight and of a lack of oversight of our regulations and the lack of the ability to really even do anything about it.
Let me move you to another area quickly, because you and I share a common bond. For our viewers and listeners, you are both listening to and looking at the only two tribal members in the United States Congress right now.
And we're good looking.
And we're good looking, but we don't look like Indians normally look like. I get that all the time. Well, you don't look Indian. I said, well, I don't know exactly
what do you
how
think
this.
I look like?
I was going to say.
I got $3 that are blonde.
But I know how important your tribal heritage
Absolutely.
is to you. I know your family's been active in tribal matters, so it's not just a question that this is a genealogical thing. This is, and frankly, we both know how important tribes are to the economy in Oklahoma. They're now the third largest employer. You have actually more Native Americans in your congressional district than any other congressional district in America. And I don't know of any other one that's got 14 tribes in it, other than, I guess, well, Don Young, Alaska. He's got hundreds.
He has a whole state of Alaska, though.
He does. He
Yeah.
does. And frankly, they've made what were used to be bands into tribes. There never were 200. There's really about 12 or 13 big.
Don't discuss that
tribal
with
units.
him.
Well, he actually, that's a point he'll make.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is an area that's extraordinarily important to us, important to you, and that you come to Congress with a really unusual knowledge base, so tell me, one, what are your major concerns and priorities in the tribal area, and two, how are you finding working on those issues in a congressional context?
I tell people this all the time. If you don't know where you came from, it's really hard to understand where you're going, because you got to know what drives you. Sometimes on my absolute hardest days, some days all of us have it, those days that you just want to go, oh, are you kidding me? I draw back on seeing my dad go through things, or I draw back on stories that my granddad has told me, and I draw back on the fact that we don't really have it that rough. A lot of stuff we have is self-inflicted, but I understand where my family came from. So heritage is a huge part of my life. And that's Cherokee heritage. It's my heritage, my family heritage that is taught, and we take pride in that. And family is the value and the saving grace, as I would say, of this country when we reinstill family values in our homes. And one thing that, Indian country, which is a term that is used up here a lot more than it's ever used home, but that's one thing we do in Indian country. We take care of ourselves. And you don't have to go any farther than looking at our tribes and the way that they're reinvesting back in our communities. But what happens is when they start using that word sovereignty, that gets blown way out of proportion from people that don't understand that term. And it's not their fault. It's a lack of education. I never knew I was special until I came up here. Everybody in Oklahoma has some type of Indian heritage, Indian line, and until I came up here and said, you told me we just doubled our our Indian our Native American blood in the house, and I said, what do you mean by that? And you said, well, I'm 1 year too, so we doubled, and then everybody started making a big deal about me being a Cherokee. I found that kind of ironic, and so the biggest challenge we have right now is educating the other members of Congress what the importance of it is. If you steal away our sovereignty, you steal away our heritage. And then you have a lost people, because it's what drives us. Of course, there's a lot more into it, but that's the basis of it. And then even the constituents of their communities, we have to make sure we educate too. For some reason, people start thinking that sovereignty means we want to be separate from the United States. You're not going to find anybody that takes more pride in America than our tribes. I mean, we have a tremendous amount of pride when it comes into that.
I think where people struggle, and because they understand that states have sovereignty, they're proud Oklahomans and simultaneously proud Americans.
Right.
And Oklahoma has jurisdiction and rights and authority to regulate things within its borders and amongst its people. Doesn't mean we don't care deeply about the United States, wouldn't fight to defend the United States, don't regard our destiny as being with the United States. And tribes are exactly the same way.
That's a very good point.
They're really talking about giving them the authority to run their own affairs for the benefit of their own people in exactly the same way states do. Now, there's always some conflicting jurisdictional issues. Those can always be negotiated out as long as each side respects the other's right and sovereignty. It's a little tougher in Oklahoma because we're not a set of reservations the way a lot of other Indians are. So this is the parcel of land. So we're all jumbled amongst one another. But again, I think one of the great secrets of the Oklahoma economy, one of the reasons we've been prosperous, is the rise of tribal economies in the last 25 years.
Especially in my district.
You bet. You look at any Indian tribe and you look at what their budgets have been, and now you start counting the thousands of people they hire and the services they deliver to their members. That they're going to get health care someplace. If they're not getting it, in the healthcare system of the Cherokee Nation or the Quapaw Nation or the Choctaw Nation, they're getting it someplace else, and the expense of that falls on other people. So, and tribes are remarkably generous. I mean, actually, when we had our disaster in Moore, the tornadoes recently, one of the first calls I got was from Chief Baker of the Cherokee Nation, and that's not their territory. But he said, Tom, of course we're going to help financially, and they certainly have, but we'd love to, we've got equipment, we've got people, we want to come help. And we had a lot of tribes that were active. The Quapaw sent their mobile disaster unit down. Same people, by the way, that helped up in Joplin when they had their mess down in Oklahoma. The absentee Shawnees, Chickasaws, they were all through that area helping not just their citizens, but anybody that needed help.
That's right.
They could help.
That's
so,
that family heritage.
Yeah.
That's us taking care of people. That's that part that people sometimes take for granted, but it is absolutely correct. You didn't have to call them; they were already on their way.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Let me ask: we're winding down. We have a couple minutes left here, but you have a unique perspective because you hadn't been in public office before. Most people that arrive in Congress have, and you're coming straight out of the private sector. What's your proudest moment or most interesting experience so far since you've arrived? And now that you've looked at the institution a little bit, what's your opinion?
Proudest moment, probably being able to call you Dad. I had to get that.
Yeah, you did.
My proudest my proudest moment was probably when I was getting sworn in. And the next day, my boys were running around with me, and my son looked up at me and said that, wow, this is my greatest day ever. I thought, really? I mean, he was 8 years old at the time. It was Jim who said that. I have, several kids, and I thought, wow, that was probably one of my proudest moments. The most interesting perspective I would have is really members. It's not as partisan as people believe it is. We get along. It's just the TV, Fox News to CNN to CNBC, they show a different story than what actually happens in the halls and in private rooms. And so people say, you think there can really be something done? Absolutely. We just got to change some of the perspectives that people have, and we can really get things done.
Well, that's a great note to end on, and I want to thank you for running. I want to thank you for winning. I would think anybody that runs for office, that's a public service because you gave the American people a choice. And it's a really wonderful pleasure and honor to serve with you. You're having a bigger impact here than I think you probably suspect. I have no doubt it's going to grow over time.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You bet.
Appreciate it.